Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Today we're looking deep into the U.S. West Coast fishing world. It's quite a situation up there.
It really is. And we're using a great piece of research as our guide. It's led by Timothy H. Frawley.
Right, the paper's called Changes to the Structure and Function of an Albacore Fishery Reveal Shifting Social Ecological Realities for Pacific Northwest Fishermen. Quite a title.
It is, but it gets right to the point.
So our mission today, essentially, is to give you the key takeaways from this study. Think of it as a shortcut through the research.
Exactly. The paper really zooms in on how things like, well, ecological changes and new regulations have massively impacted fishermen over, what, 35 plus years?
Yeah, a long time. Specifically those targeting North Pacific albacore with troll and pole and line gear. Traditional methods.
And why this matters, the core issue is that management often gets it a bit wrong.
How so?
Well, they tend to see fishermen as specialists, like you fish for salmon or you fish for ground fish, maximize efficiency in that one thing. But this research really hammers home that for fishermen to actually survive, especially in these complex systems.
These social ecological systems, the SES they talk about?
Right. Survival depends on flexibility. It depends on diversification, being able to fish for multiple things, not just sticking to one.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket, basically.
Pretty much. Especially when that basket is getting shakier all the time.
And albacore tuna is the key here because it's different.
It's unique, yeah. It's one of the U.S. West Coast's last major open access fisheries. That's huge.
Open access meaning anyone can basically participate. Within reason.
Relatively speaking, yes.
Yeah.
Compared to other big fisheries like salmon or ground fish or even crab, which have seen massive restrictions. Think limited entry permits, catch share.
Privatization, essentially.
Exactly. So those doors closed for many people. Albacore, well, it remained an open door, a kind of safety net.
Okay, so that's the setup. Now, how did they figure all this out? The study's approach seems pretty solid.
Oh, definitely. They acknowledged right off the bat how complex this is. You can't just look at fish numbers or just talk to people. You need both.
Methodological triangulation, is that the term?
That's the one. Mixing methods.
Yeah.
So they pulled together two main types of data.
Okay, what were they?
First, the hard numbers, quantitative stuff. Over 35 years, 1981 to 2018, of vessel-level data. Landings, how much ever it went in, prices.
From Oregon and Washington records, PACA, NMFS, logbooks, that sort of thing?
Precisely. A really rich data set. But crucially, they didn't stop there.
They added the qualitative side, the human element.
Yes. Semi-structured interviews. They talked to, I think it was 22 people, mostly active fishermen, plus a few industry reps. And focus groups, too.
And why was that so important? Just to get some quotes?
No, much more than that. The numbers tell you what changed. The interviews help explain why it changed.
Okay. The drivers behind the trends.
Exactly. Why did fishermen make certain choices?
Oh.
How did they adapt? The interviews helped identify those drivers and also, check if the patterns and the numbers actually made sense to the people living it.
So it connects the dots between the ecological shifts and the social reality.
It does. It bridges that social ecological gap. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we need to remember the context. Regulatory changes were huge.
Right. You mentioned the restrictions starting in the 70s, ramping up through the 90s?
Yeah, major restrictions on access, new gear rules, and then the big one, privatization through catch shares, especially in ground fish.
They call it rationalization, don't they? Sounds efficient.
It sounds efficient, but what it often means is fewer boats, bigger boats, and consolidation. It pushed a lot of smaller operators out or forced them to rely more heavily on whatever was still open.
Like albacore.
Like albacore. It became even more critical because other options were disappearing.
Okay, so you've got this pressure from regulations squeezing fishermen, and then the paper talks about the fish themselves adding another layer of complexity. They moved.
Oh, massively. The geographic distribution of albacore just completely shifted over the study period. It's quite dramatic.
Where were they originally?
Back in the 70s, they were spread out pretty widely. You could find them from British Columbia all the way down to Baja California. The fleet was mostly based in Southern California then.
Okay, a wide range. But then?
Then, in the 80s and 90s, things changed. The fishery moved way offshore.
Offshore, like, how far?
We're talking high seas, sometimes over 1,500 kilometers out. That's a long trip.
Wow. That changes everything, doesn't it? That requires a different kind of boat, a different kind of operation entirely, more capital intensive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that directly impacted the fleet. Suddenly, only the really large vessels, say over 60 feet, could realistically operate that far out.
They had the fuel capacity, the seakeeping ability.
Exactly. They could handle those high seas trips, stay out longer, maybe even use carrier vessels to offload catch and resupply. So, unsurprisingly, their share of the total albacore catch went way up during that period.
And California, the old hub?
Landings there dropped off a cliff, basically, starting in the 80s. Oregon and Washington started picking up more.
But then, more recently, things shifted again.
Yes, that's the sort of aha moment in the last decade or so, say 2010 to 2016. The effort pulled back in.
Back towards the coast.
Right. The fishing became much more concentrated in coastal waters, particularly off Oregon and Washington.
And this wasn't just fishermen saving fuel, the fish actually moved.
That's what the interviews confirmed. Fishermen were clear they saw a real change in where the fish were. One of them said something like the fish seemed not distributed over as big an area anymore, more bunched up, closer in.
Which, in turn, must have changed the fleet dynamics again.
It did. With the albacore closer to shore, the smaller boats, those under 45 feet, and the medium ones could get back in the game more easily.
They could target them opportunistically again.
Exactly. And the data shows that. The proportion of small and medium vessels participating and their share of the catch started to increase again in that recent period.
Okay, so the location of the fish drives the type of boat that can effectively target them. Makes sense.
Yeah. Big offshore fish need big offshore boats. Coastal fish open the door for smaller guys again.
Here's where it gets really interesting then. Because the study found these different sized vessels didn't just change where they fished, they developed totally different strategies over time.
That's right. The impacts weren't the same across the board. You saw these divergent paths emerging.
Let's break that down. What happened with the smaller and medium-sized boats?
Okay, so for the small and medium operators, the key finding was their consistency in diversification. They kept fishing for a mix of species over the years.
So they didn't specialize.
No, they maintained diverse revenue streams. And within that mix, the open access albacore fishery became more and more important.
More important how?
It became a bigger slice of their overall income pie. It acted like a financial buffer, a crucial lifeline, or maybe insurance fishery.
Insurance against what? Like a bad salmon season?
Exactly. Or if the crab season was poor, or if regulations tightened up somewhere else, they could pivot. They could ramp up their effort on albacore because it was accessible. It helped them manage risk.
Okay, so diversification was key for the smaller guys, and albacore was a critical part of that diversification. What about the big boats, the over 60-footers?
That's where it gets really counterintuitive almost. They went the other way.
They specialized.
They became less diverse and more specialized, focusing heavily on albacore as time went on. This was actually quite different from what other large vessels in the region were doing in other fisheries.
Wait a second. The big boats specialized, focused on albacore. Did they make more money doing that?
Well, yes. The value they captured from albacore certainly increased, especially recently.
So doesn't that kind of support the efficiency is king idea? Specialize in the high value thing?
But that's the tension the paper really brings out. Yes, specialization worked for them in terms of maximizing value from albacore. But the study argues that the system's resilience, the long-term stability, might actually lie more with the diversified approach of the smaller vessels.
Because if the albacore market or stock crashes, the specialist is in big trouble.
Precisely. The diversified operator has other options to fall back on. The specialist is highly vulnerable. It's about individual boat economics versus the health of the whole fishing community and system.
And that specialization by the large vessels was helped along by changes in the market itself, right?
Well,
Albacore got more valuable.
hugely so. The real value, adjusted for inflation, of landed albacore shot up, especially in the last decade.
Why? What changed?
It used to be almost entirely a cannery fish, sold in bulk at low prices to, like, 3 big companies: Starkist, Chicken of the Sea, Bumblebee. A near monopoly, really.
Kept prices down.
Exactly. But then the industry worked hard, got sustainable certification, the Marine Stewardship Council MSC label back in 2007.
And that opened up new markets.
Totally. It allowed them to move beyond just selling cheap fish for cans. The market became much more sophisticated.
So instead of just 3 buyers,
Fishermen reported having access to maybe 25 or 30 different buyers. They could sell to local fresh fish markets, but also tap into these really lucrative, though sometimes volatile, blast frozen markets.
for sashimi-grade tuna.
You got it. That commands a much higher price, and while that big price jump was most noticeable for the large vessels equipped for blast freezing,
The specialists.
right, but the smaller guys benefited too. They developed their own niches, direct sales, local gourmet markets, even doing their own micro-canning operations for a premium product. More value capture all around.
So this rising value, combined with the open access, it made albacore not just important for individual boats, but structurally important for the whole regional fishing network.
That's a great way to phrase it. The network analysis in the paper really shows this.
What did that find?
Albacore's importance just skyrocketed. In the 80s, it was maybe the 10th most valuable fishery on the West Coast by ex-vessel value.
Okay, decent, but not top tier.
But by the 2010-2018 period, it jumped to the third most important. Only Dungeness crab and pink shrimp brought in more value.
Wow, that's a huge leap.
And it wasn't just about value. It became incredibly central in the network, like a bridge,
Connecting what?
connecting other key fisheries. The analysis showed it became a crucial link between, say, the Chinook salmon troll fishery and the Dungeness crab pot fishery.
Meaning boats were often involved in albacore and one of those others?
Exactly. It's between him and his centrality, how often it lies on the shortest path between other fisheries in the network went way up. It suggests that while diversification is still happening,
Especially for smaller boats.
right, but the range of fisheries available to build that diverse portfolio has actually shrunk. There are fewer viable options overall, which makes that open access albacore fishery even more critical as the connecting piece for the ones that remain.
Okay, so let me try to sum this up. For the smaller boats, the ones perhaps pushed out of other fisheries by regulations, open access albacore became absolutely vital for maintaining a diverse, resilient business.
That's the core message, yes. It's the foundation that allows these smaller, maybe more range-restricted operations to survive in the face of all this consolidation and privatization elsewhere.
But relying so heavily on one fishery, even an open access one, sounds risky too. Are there threats to albacore itself?
Oh, absolutely. Huge ecological risks are hovering. Climate change is the big one.
How does that affect albacore?
We're seeing way more climate variability,
Yeah.
stronger El Niños,
Yeah.
weird Pacific decadal oscillation patterns, and those massive marine heat waves like the blob from 2014 to 2016.
Right, I remember that.
Albacore, especially the juveniles they catch off the West Coast, are really sensitive to ocean temperature. Warmer waters can push them north, change their migration routes entirely.
So the fish might just move again, maybe out of reach.
It's a real possibility. They've already been seen much further north, even off southeast Alaska, during warm spells.
Yeah.
If those patterns become more common, it could completely disrupt the fishery as we know it now.
And because albacore is now acting as this connecting bridge fishery, if it falters, it weakens the whole network.
Exactly. Especially since the other big pillars are also shaky. Salmon runs are notoriously inconsistent, and Dungeness crab, well, that faces a terrifying list of threats.
Like what?
Ocean acidification making it harder for larvae to form shells, expanding low oxygen dead zones on the seafloor, toxic harmful algal blooms that shut down the fishery, and increasing issues with whale entanglements and pot gear leading to restrictions.
Wow. So if crab or salmon decline further, the pressure on albacore just gets even more intense.
It does. The system relies on it. The paper is careful to note its limitations, of course.
Like focusing mainly on Oregon and Washington landing.
Right. They acknowledge that some larger vessels might land fish outside the PNW, so their diversification might be slightly underestimated. But the overall picture is pretty clear.
Which leads to the big management takeaway. What should fisheries managers do with this information?
The paper argues pretty strongly for a shift in thinking. For decades, the goal has often been maximizing economic efficiency, getting the most dollars out of the resource, which usually means favoring big industrial-style fishing.
The rationalization we talked about.
Exactly. But this study suggests that maybe future licensing, future management, needs to value other things just as highly. Things like equity, things like community stewardship.
Supporting the resilience of those smaller scale operations and the coastal communities they sustain.
Precisely, because diversity confers resilience. Not just biological diversity in the ocean, but diversity in the fleet, in the types of businesses, in the strategies people use.
So the albacore fishery wasn't just about fish. It was about maintaining that crucial human diversity in the face of all these sweeping changes.
That's it. It's been absolutely indispensable for keeping those small-scale, diversified fishers afloat while they navigate these incredibly rapid, intense, and tangled-up social and ecological shifts.
So what does this all mean? Here's something to think about. If climate change keeps messing with where fish live, and volatility in other fisheries forces fishermen to depend even more on being flexible and diversified just to survive,
Which seems likely.
Then how should we manage shared resources, especially ones like tuna that swim across vast oceans? Should the rules prioritize the biggest industrial players who can catch the most fish the cheapest way based on historical dominance?
Yeah.
Or should management actively work to ensure that smaller local producers have flexible access, maintaining that diversity and resilience, even if it doesn't look quite as efficient on a simple spreadsheet?
That really is the question, isn't it?
Y-
What kind of fishing future do we want to build?